welcome to the Chronicle Take 2, the podcast which continues to chat over from the Chronicle, which is the official film podcast for the People's Movies. My name is Paul, I am your host, I'm also the editor of the People Movies. Thank you for joining me for this extra episode. So for this episode of the Chronicle Take 2, I will be reviewing two things. I'll be reviewing Walking Dead, The Ones Who Live, Season 1, which is available on Blu-ray, and also available on Blu-ray and DVD is Sting. And the first review for this episode of the Chronicle Take 2 is The Walking Dead, The Ones Who Live, Season 1. It's now available on Blu-ray and DVD and digital from Acorn Media International. The actual series was just recently shown on Sky. Let's go back to The Walking Dead finale. Fans of the original series, they were really looking forward to the films that were promised, which would see Rick Grimes and Michonne finally getting reunited. Then COVID happened and things changed. The world closed down. Things came to grind to a halt. There was no television shows or even films for the cinema getting made. And when we were allowed to live again and come out to play and be humans, some of those shows get cancelled, others get restarted. And even the films that were going to come out to the cinema then, some of them ended up on streaming services. Sadly, some ended up getting cancelled altogether for various reasons. As for the films about Rick and Michonne, they actually ended up becoming a series, as we now know as The Walking Dead, The Ones Who Live. When the news was announced, obviously, about the end of the original Walking Dead series, AMC assured fans that this wasn't the end of the franchise. They promised a lot of spin-off series involving many of the show's popular characters were coming, like Carol, Daryl, Maggie, and Negan, to name a few. But it seemed to be the one about Rick and Michonne was the one that was really exciting the fans the most. Here in the UK, the Walking Dead fans usually get any shows or any specials days or even weeks after it was shown in the US. But for some reason, The Ones Who Live, we had to wait actually months or even to a year. Season 1, this series consists of 6 episodes with Andrew Lincoln and Danai Gurira and also Pollyanna McIntosh all reprising their roles as Rick, Michonne and Jadis. So I'm just going to quickly go through each of the episodes and just say a little few things about them and what they are. What I will say, folks, sometimes there might be the odd spoiler there. I do apologise. Just before we get the credits of the first episode, which is called Years, we meet a distraught and emotional Rick who looks like he's just about to end all things, end his life. And then the credits kick in. And then we come back and we learn that we're 5 years after the events of the bridge. And Rick is doing what he does best. He is killing walkers. We also learn at the same time he's trying to escape. And there's at one point, the first time we see him, cutting his hand off, and that's just a little bit of, I think, a homage to the comic book Rick, where he loses his hand. Many believed in the original Walking Dead Rick was going to lose his hand, but ended up being the character Aaron who lost his hand, all thanks to when his arm caught in between logs when they were making the bridge in a later episode of The Walking Dead. We do clearly see that Rick is suffering. He's suffering from some sort of PTSD, and then we learn that it's the CRM or the Civil Republic military take Rick, and they take him to a city which we learn used to be Philadelphia, and here we find other survivors, and those who are found are put to work killing the walkers for energy, growing food, but no one is allowed to leave because it is just like a military dictatorship that's going on here. Rick is actually trapped, and we do see several times him trying to escape. And it's Okafor is one of the higher up people in the CRM who says to Rick, "I'm your friend." Okafor's played by actor Craig Tate, but he's a man who's got a different vision from those in power at the CRM. And Rick at this point is a consignee. He's the one that goes on to kill all the walkers. And it's only death is the only way of escaping the Republic because no one is free. So Rick decides to join the army and who's run by Major General Beale, who's played by the actor Terry Quinn. Terry Quinn, people know from The Lost. It's at this stage we do learn what the A's and B's that we hear a lot through the Walking Dead franchise are. And this is a sort of rating system that the CRM do use for the survivors. We quickly see Rick is becoming one of the best soldiers in the CRM, but secretly he's still planning to escape. So he's just playing along with the system at this point. But every time he does try to escape, someone thwarts him. Sometimes it's his friend Fawn, and he does have another friend, Esteban, and they're his closest friends in the Republic. And the whole sort of city, the Republic, it looks like it's sort of like some dystopian type, communist Russian type place. And as the episode goes on, maybe clearly see Rick's starting to lose what he left behind. Oh, it's keeping him hanging with a thread is the letters that Michonne wrote to him, and that's part of what he's left his whole life. And there's at one point, Rick tells Okafor about a story about his family's farm back when he was a boy, where his dad deliberately burned the place. And it's a sort of religious metaphor here where burning something and getting reborn, Phoenix for the Flames type thing. And then we fast forward and we see Rick in a helicopter with Okafor, and it's attacked. People are killed. But who attacked it? Next minute we see one of those is Michonne. So episode 1 is all about setting up what's happened to Rick. Episode 2, which is called Gone, is all about Michonne's story. This is, we find, is 6 years after the bridge. Michonne is saved by a new community who see her as an asset. There are a lot of moving the community who are moving away from the migrating walkers. And several times the community actually saves Michonne. Then there's one time Michonne saves many of the community when a CRM helicopter attacks them. And it's like they attacks them with chlorine. Many of the community sadly die. But the ones who she saves pulls into an indoor place where they're away from the chlorine, where they get a chance to obviously recuperate. And then we fast forward a year and we get to the stage at the end of episode 1 where they're attacking the group she's with, attacks the helicopter that Rick's in. Just as she's about to kill all those that escaped from the helicopter, she learns that one of them is Rick. And at this stage, Rick tells Michonne to be strong and just follow his lead. And before we know it, Michonne is also a consignee like Rick was. And at this stage, we learn we meet Pollyanna McIntosh's Jadis again. So episode 3, Rick meets Jadis, and he starts to learn it was her that saved them, and the CRM don't take chances on who they do save. And she actually threatens Rick to kill his family and the Alexandrians by revealing where they actually are surviving. Because if Rick escapes, he's jeopardizing where the CRM are based. At this stage, no one really knows where the CRM base is actually. Also, Thorne is now the commander. Rick is also still planning to escape, but as we quickly learn, it's not him that's escaping. He's helping Michonne to escape. At this stage, also, Michonne, as she's walking about the city, she quickly meets a man who did the drawings on the mobile phone, and that gives her sort of hope. And it's a lot of homage, obviously, to the original survivors, because we see other phones, and you see some of the other Alexandrian survivors. And the man who created this art, he says, believe a little bit longer. That's the Japanese words that was on the side of the phone when Michonne finds the phone, and it gives her obviously hope. And the original sees that Rick is still alive. Also, Fawn, she's starting to like Dana, or Michonne, or Dana is the name that Michonne uses, but she knows there's something different from him. And Rick, at the same time, is slowly moving up the ranks. And then we find ourselves back in a helicopter. Michonne's there, Rick's there, the weather's getting really bad. And then suddenly, Michonne grabs Rick, and the two of them are thrown out of the helicopter. So this takes us on to episode 4, What We Are. Michonne and Rick, Michonne's really angry with Rick, and this is when Rick learns about RJ, his son, who we obviously see in the original series. He knew nothing about her, but Rick is arguing his case. I can't leave. I can't leave. Jesus will destroy Alexandria. Both argue. At this time, we learn that the CRM helicopter is destroyed. Obviously, it's evidence. And both have a heart-to-heart. And before you know it, they made up with each other. Rick tells what kept his hope alive. It was obviously seeing Michonne in dreams, and at the same time, before that, seeing Carol in dreams. That was all that kept him alive. And now, as they're about to go home, they find there's a hybrid motor outside the building that they were hiding in. And it is, if anyone knows when the original Walking Dead was out, there was no such thing as hybrid cars, and that's how they escape. Just before then, we get to see Rick and Michonne working together, and that shows you a bit of the old school Rick and the old school Michonne, and shows you the magnetic chemistry that both of them have. So we're now in episode 5, and we do see another original Walking Dead character appear. I won't spoil it and say the name. And we get to see a little bit of the story. It's a connection to, I'll maybe spoil a little bit. It's a little connection to Jadis or Anne. It finally becomes just as they're back to Rick and Michonne. Everyone's just looking so good for them. They've got a pack, they've got food, they're heading back. And The Good Life, the song The Good Life from Frank Sinatra is playing. Before you know it, Jadis has found them. So Rick still thinks he can save Jadis or Anne, but something that does happen. So we're on to episode 6, the final episode, the last time. But ends up Rick and Michonne have to head back to the CRM because Jadis reveals something to them. It's a dossier of all of the plans of the CRM. And if they can bring that back, they can actually think they can change the future. So at this stage, Rick is getting the talk with Major Beale, or the Exelon brief, as it's called. And it reflects back to the time when Okafor says, don't believe everything that the sword does. It's something that Major Beale does with a sword. We also learn a lot of other revelations that there was a second American Civil War, and that sort of sets things up with the CRM. Bale reveals a lot of secrets, a lot of how the CRM have influenced a lot of things, how they destroy colonies, settlements, how they take the resources, and how the final plans are, what they're going to actually do. There is an explosive ending there. The burning question is The Walking Dead, the ones who live in, any good? I will say yes. Go back to the original plan for it. There was going to be 3 movies. Would they have actually worked? How things ended with the original series? Now that we obviously knew what happened and how the Fear of the Walking Dead ended at the same time, I think the fate of these movies was probably fated back when Glenn and Abraham got very close and personal with Lucille Negan's baseball bat. And I think at that stage, the studio execs, the people in power, who weren't scared to change things and be very controversial from the comic book to the annoyance of a lot of hardcore fans. It was probably them and COVID. It gave them food for thought. And obviously, they thought recasting things and reshaping things. And that's how we got, obviously, the series. Rick Michonne, the backbone of The Walking Dead. And when one goes, the backbone fractures. It becomes a lost cause by many, and the whole backbone fractures. The Ones Who Live isn't perfect. It does have its flaws. The opening, as I said, the opening episode fill the blanks and join up the T's, and it shows you how Rick, who was one time the strong heart of the good times in the series, is now a man who will do anything for his family, a leader who tried to flee, who tried. He's now trapped and he's forced into a mundane life, and he can't escape the iron fist of the CRM. And then we see him, he's traumatized, he's tormented, he even thinks about ending things. But the memories of Michonne and his daughter Judith are keeping the old Rick alive. And it's a fear of sort of keeping him in the Republic. It comes from Jadis, who obviously threatens to expose Alexandria. which could obviously lead to Judith's death. And Michonne, she can't accept this. She's just the same old Michonne straight through, the warrior, but she's also every part of Rick's soulmate, and she's determined to get the old Rick back. So both Lincoln and Gawara, I do apologise for the pronunciation of her name. Their performances are very impassioned, very, very thrilling, and very engaging. It keeps things alive here. The standout is a character played by Matthew August Jeffers, the new character Nat. He's from that moving community. We do help out Michonne in earlier episodes. He's very lion-hearted here. And The Walking Dead, The Ones Who Live, starts strongly, but unfortunately, as we get closer to the ending, it starts to feel very rushed, and it never reaches its full potential, and maybe becoming one or more, maybe becoming just sort of one contained story. The end result might have been a lot better. Nevertheless, out of all the series that have happened, I will probably say this is probably the best of the Walking Dead spin-offs. And I'll give The Walking Dead, The Ones Who Live, 3.5 stars out of 5. And the final review for this episode of the Chronicle Take 2, Kiah Roache-Turner's Sting, which is now out on Blu-ray, DVD, and digital from Studio Canal. So this stars Alia Brown. She plays a character called Charlotte, and people might recognise her face because she plays the young Furiosa in the Furiosa Mad Max saga, which is now out to own as well. She plays young Furiosa just before Anya Taylor-Joy takes over. So this is set in Brooklyn, New York, and the city's going through one of the worst snowstorms recorded history in the city. And we start 4 days earlier in this really old building where we see it's like a comet flying out from space. For some reason it lands in this apartment building that Charlotte and her family do live in. What comes out of it is a little spider. And this little spider is in this old doll's house, which Charlotte would love to get her hands on. And this is how she finds it, with the spider. Just before we find out Charlotte trying to get out that old house, we open up with an old lady in this house, and there's a lot of noise from the wall. She's watching old films on the television. She's knitting away. She gets a bit terrified of the noises she actually has, and so she calls the exterminator, and they come out and they find the source. But we also see a lot of clues of other exterminators are there as well, and it gives you a little idea there's something dangerous actually happened. So we do meet Charlotte. Charlotte lives with her stepdad, who's a comic book artist by night, but he's also the caretaker of the apartment that they'll live in. Charlotte sort of wants to be an artist herself. Charlotte finds the little spider, as I said, when she breaks into her neighbour's house to get the doll's house. And the building just seems to be affected with insects, infested, I would say. And the generator and the extractors just seem to be falling apart. And we do quickly learn that the old lady we do meet at the beginning is one of is Charlotte's grandmum, Helga. And the nasty woman is actually her aunt. About 28-30 minutes into the movie, and the film sort of sets up the story, meeting the characters, showing us Charlotte's situation. Her mum has a new baby. Dad is overworked. The building is falling apart. The neighbours and the pet animals, like the parrot, are dead. So who are you going to call? You're going to call Frank the Exterminator. Is it a rat? No, as we do quickly learn. Of course, we all know what Charlotte's new little friend is, and quickly learn that it's not your average little spider, as it seems to be getting bigger very, very quickly. And what Sting does, it pays homage to many of the old classic tropes and genres from horror to sci-fi, like your arachnophobia, Del Toro's Maniac even. And and obviously Plan B from outer space. And Helga watches all these old B-horrors and sci-fis, all those sort of ones for the 1950s. And the whole setup is very much tick box territory here. Dark rooms, residents trapped in their home because of the weather outside. And then we have obviously the creepy people, neighbours, the old people. Some we don't know, some might even save the day. I could actually go on and on here. If you have fear of spiders, get into mouse ears, I don't think you really want to watch this. Sadly, Kiah Roache-Turner Sting is a massive disappointment. And the director, he's an Australian director, and he directed the Wyrmwood movies. And both of them are absolutely bonkers, but bonkers in an entertaining way. And this film just runs, I think it's about 90, maybe up to 95 minutes long. And it's a very, very slow film for a very short film. And it's another tick box thing here. The neighbours are very cliched, very annoying, but that's not always a demeanour to many of the cast in here, because the performances, some are terrible, some are okay. It's sort of, some of the performances, they sort of keep into a little bit of sort of Tim Burton-esque, just a little bit. And one of the problems, I think, with this movie, I think when it was released, don't quote me, when it was out in the cinema, I think it might have been a 12, possibly a 15. This is, the home release is a 15. And it does, at times, play like that, sort of 12, sort of on the borderline. And this actually plays more like a very, very dull family drama. If this was intentional, maybe it could have went more into sort of Amblin Entertainment, the sort of Steven Spielberg type family drama. Like, it's not something like E.T., where one of the family finds something and we gradually start to learn not always what it seems. What we get is something that's very unoriginal. So it's when we do get to the final third of the film, Sting starts to try being the film that we were promised at the beginning. By then, obviously, we've given up all hope. And all the kills, nothing's really memorable here. And even if you do have a fear of spiders, nothing is actually very memorable. And I think if Kiah Turner was given a license to direct a film and sort of bonkers level of the Wyrmwood films, more the first film and the second film. The second film is good, but it's not as good as the first film. We might have had some more exciting on the cards here. Maybe that might be an idea of Sting 2. Yes, folks, sadly, the way the film ended, it ends where there's a possible sequel. But Sting, very disappointing, flat, one-dimensional film, and it's a predictable mess. And I unfortunately give Sting 1 star. That's a lot, folks, for the Chronicle Take 2. Thank you very much for Acorn Media International and Studio Canal for letting us review their shows and films. The Walking Dead, The Ones Who Live, is now available on Blu-ray, DVD and digital, and so is Sting. You can follow us on social media at Facebook at The People's Movie, and also at X at The People's Movie, over at Instagram at The People's Movies. We're also on Pinterest at TPM_UK, and at YouTube at The People's Movies 1. You can keep track of social media for future episodes of The Chronicle and The Chronicle Take 2. You can also keep track the same things by signing up over an email newsletter we do have. You can sign over at The People's Movies. As and when the next episode of The Chronicle will be out, it will be out very, very shortly. It will be just myself again for episode 34, so stay tuned for that. It will probably be around September time when Clotilde will be joining us a future episodes. You can show obviously your support for The Chronicle Take 2 and The People's Movies by Buy Me a Coffee and at PayPal. The links you'll find at the website. Share this podcast on social media with your friends and family. And if you're listening via one of the popular podcast sites, do give us a little rating and like and share. Some of those places will be such as Podbean, YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, Castbox, Listen Note, to name a few. If you do go over to Podbean, at the top of the page, you'll find all the places where we will find those episodes. Obviously, you can find those episodes also on The People's Movies. Thank you very much for joining me. Until the next time, enjoy the movies.